The stars looked different from this distance. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched the massive structure floating in space ahead of them. It was the Council Station, home to the Galactic Council. The station was enormous, bigger than any city on Earth. Light sparkled across its surface like a small galaxy of its own. "We're really here," Commander Lisa Hayes said quietly beside him. She was looking at the same view, her eyes wide with wonder. "After all these years of wondering if we were alone in the universe, here we are." Jake nodded. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel only 2 years ago. It had been the greatest achievement in human history. Within months, they had detected signals from other civilizations. Within a year, they had made contact. Now they were about to meet the leaders of 12 different alien species, all members of something called the Galactic Council. "Captain Morrison," a voice called from the communications station. "We're receiving docking instructions from the station." "Follow them exactly," Jake ordered. "Let's not mess this up on our first day." The ship moved slowly toward the docking bay. Through the windows, Jake could see other ships of strange designs. Some were long and thin like needles. Others were round like bubbles. One looked like it was made of crystal and light. Each one represented a different species, a different world, a different way of thinking. The docking process took 20 minutes. When it was complete, Jake and Lisa led a small team toward the airlock. There were 6 humans in total, all wearing their dress uniforms. They had practiced this moment 100 times, but Jake's heart still beat faster than normal. The airlock opened. Cool air rushed in, carrying strange smells. The corridor beyond was huge, with ceilings at least 20 feet high. Everything was white and silver, clean and perfect. Lights glowed softly from the walls themselves. "Welcome to Council Station," a voice said. A figure approached them from down the corridor. It walked on 4 legs but had a torso that rose up like a human's. Its skin was pale blue and smooth. Its eyes were large and dark, with no visible pupils. "I am Ambassador Threnkal of the Velkrim people. I will guide you to the council chamber." Jake extended his hand, then remembered that might not be the right greeting. "Thank you, Ambassador. I'm Captain Jake Morrison. This is Commander Lisa Hayes. We're honored to be here." Threnkal looked at Jake's extended hand with what might have been curiosity. "A physical greeting gesture, interesting. We have studied your species, Captain Morrison. You are quite young as civilizations go, but you have potential." They walked through the corridors of the station. Jake tried not to stare at everything they passed. Other aliens moved through the halls, some walking, some floating, some moving in ways that seemed impossible. All of them stopped to watch the humans pass. Some seemed curious. Others seemed concerned. "You must understand," Threnkal said as they walked. "The Galactic Council has existed for over 2,000 of your years. In that time, we have achieved something remarkable. We have ended war as your species understands it." "Ended war?" Lisa asked. "How is that possible?" "Through logic and mathematics," Threnkal explained. "War is simply a method of resolving conflicts when diplomacy fails. But war, as you know it, is wasteful. Billions die. Resources are destroyed. Entire worlds can be lost. This is inefficient." They entered a large lift that began to rise. Through the transparent walls, Jake could see level after level of the station passing by. "So we developed a better system," Threnkal continued. "When conflicts arise that cannot be solved through negotiation, we conduct warfare according to strict protocols. Ships engage in calculated exchanges. We use mathematical models to predict outcomes. When one side reaches a predetermined casualty threshold, they surrender. The conflict ends. Typically, our wars last only hours, sometimes just minutes. Total casualties are usually less than 10%. Jake and Lisa exchanged a glance. Something about this explanation made Jake uncomfortable, but he couldn't quite identify what it was. The lift stopped at the top level of the station. The doors opened into an enormous chamber. The ceiling was a dome showing the stars outside. Around the circular room were 12 seats, each one different in design. 11 of them were occupied by aliens of various shapes and sizes. "The 12th seat is for humanity," Threnkal said. "Should you be accepted into the council." The humans were led to the center of the chamber. Jake felt 12 pairs of alien eyes watching him. Some of those eyes were familiar in shape. Others were completely foreign. "Humans of Earth," a deep voice echoed through the chamber. It came from a large alien that looked almost like a bear covered in dark purple fur. "I am High Counselor Vexthar of the Throlian people. We have reviewed your application for council membership. We have studied your history, your technology, your culture. We have many questions. We're ready to answer them, Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. Your species has a long history of warfare, another counselor spoke. This one was thin and tall, with skin that seemed to shimmer like oil on water. Your planet has known conflict continuously for its entire recorded history. Wars lasting years, decades, even centuries. Casualties in the millions. This concerns us. It's true that humanity has fought many wars, Jake admitted, but we've learned from them. We've grown. In the last century, we've had less global conflict than ever before in our history. We've worked together to reach the stars. Yet you still maintain massive military forces, the tall alien countered. Your ships, while primitive, are heavily armed. You have weapons designed to destroy entire cities. Why, if you are so peaceful? Lisa stepped forward. Because we remember our history. We know that peace must be defended. We hope for the best, but we prepare for the worst. That's how humanity has survived. Preparation for war is not the same as preparation for survival, Threnkal said. We will teach you our methods. You will learn that there are better ways. The questioning continued for hours. They asked about Earth's governments, its resources, its population. They asked about human biology, about how humans thought and felt. Some questions were easy to answer. Others were difficult. Finally, High Counselor Vex Thar stood. We have made our decision. Humanity will be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council. You will be assigned a colony world far from the core systems. You will have observers among you to ensure you follow Council protocols. In time, if you prove yourselves capable of civilized conduct, you will be granted full membership. Jake felt relief wash over him. Thank you, High Counselor. Humanity will not disappoint you. See that you don't, Vexthar said. You will be assigned to Delta Persei 4, a world suitable for human colonization. It is remote but resource-rich. You may establish a colony there immediately. The meeting concluded. As the humans were led back through the station, Jake noticed something he hadn't before. The aliens around them moved with purpose but without urgency. Everything was orderly, calm, controlled. Even their conversations seemed measured and logical. They're so different from us, Lisa said quietly when they were back on their ship. Yeah, Jake agreed. Did you notice what they said about war? How they fight for hours, and when casualties reach a certain point, someone surrenders. I noticed, Lisa said. It's logical, I suppose. Why fight longer than necessary? But what if your enemy doesn't play by those rules? Jake asked. What if you're fighting someone who won't surrender at 10% casualties? Lisa didn't answer. She didn't need to. They both knew human history well enough. Humans had fought battles where casualties reached 50, 60, even 70%, and neither side surrendered. Humans had fought to the last person defending their homes. Humans had a word for that kind of fighting: total war. The Galactic Council had never experienced total war. They had evolved beyond it, made it obsolete through mathematics and logic. To them, warfare was a calculated exchange, a problem to be solved with the minimum necessary force. Jake looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there was Delta Persei 4, humanity's new home among the stars. It was supposed to be far from any danger, a safe place for humanity to grow and learn. But Jake couldn't shake a feeling in his gut, an instinct that had kept humanity alive for thousands of years, the feeling that peace, no matter how logical and well-planned, never lasted forever. The ship undocked from the station and turned toward home. Behind them, the council station grew smaller against the stars. Inside that station, 12 species lived in harmony, protected by mathematical models and warfare protocols. None of them knew that beyond their borders, something was watching. Something that didn't care about protocols or calculations. Something that was about to remind the galaxy that some enemies don't surrender at 10% casualties. Some enemies don't surrender at all. 6 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council. The colony on Delta Persei 4 was growing quickly. 50,000 humans now called the planet home, with more arriving every week. They built cities, farms, and research facilities. They learned from the other council species and shared their own knowledge in return. Admiral Jake Morrison looked at the planet from his office on the orbital station. He had been promoted after the successful first contact. Now he commanded all human military forces in council space. It wasn't a large force, Just 12 ships and a few thousand personnel, but it was growing. "Admiral, we're receiving an emergency broadcast from the Council," Lieutenant Danny Pierce called from the communications station. Jake turned from the window. "Put it through." The screen flickered to life. Ambassador Threncal appeared, but the Velcrim looked different than Jake remembered. The alien's movements were quick and jerky, not the calm and measured motions Jake had seen before. "Captain Morrison, Admiral Morrison," Threncal said quickly. "There has been an attack. The Krell Dominion has crossed into Council space. They have already destroyed 3 of our border stations. A full invasion force is heading toward Corinth Prime." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "Who are the Krell?" "Hostile species from beyond our borders," Threncal explained. "We have had limited contact with them before. They were warned to stay out of Council space. They have ignored that warning." "How large is their force?" "Our sensors detect over 400 ships. It is the largest military fleet seen in Council space in over 1,000 years. 400 ships. Jake's small fleet of 12 suddenly seemed very small indeed. "What is the Council's response?" Jake asked. "High Counselor Vexthar is leading our defense fleet to Corinth Prime. We have assembled 200 ships. Our mathematical models show we have an 87% chance of victory. The battle should be concluded within 3 to 4 hours." The screen went dark. Jake stood still for a moment, processing the information. The Council was so confident. They had their mathematical models, their protocols, their certainty that everything would follow the rules. "Sir," Lisa Hayes entered the office. She had been promoted to commander and served as Jake's second in command. "I saw the broadcast. This is serious." "Very serious," Jake agreed. "Get me everything we know about the Krell, and start preparing our ships just in case." "Just in case of what?" "Just in case the Council's math is wrong." The battle at Corinth Prime began 8 hours later. Every Council member could watch it through the sensor feeds. Jake sat in his office with his senior staff, Lisa, Danny Pierce, Tactical Officer Kyle Bennett, and Science Advisor Dr. Rachel Stone. The 2 fleets faced each other in space above the planet. The Council fleet was organized in perfect geometric formations. Each ship was exactly the right distance from its neighbors. Everything was calculated for maximum efficiency. "They're beautiful," Rachel said, watching the formations. "Like a dance." The Krell fleet was different. Their ships were dark and jagged, covered in what looked like armor plating. They moved in loose groups, without the precise formations of the Council fleet. High Counselor Vexthar's voice came through the communication channel. "Krell forces, you have violated Council space. Under galactic law, you must withdraw immediately or face military action." There was no response from the Krell. "This is your final warning," Vexthar continued. "Withdraw now or we will engage." Still no response. "Very well," Vexthar said. "All Council ships commence calculated engagement. Follow Protocol 7. The Council fleet opened fire. Beams of energy crossed the space between the 2 fleets. The shots were precise, aimed at specific targets on the Krell ships. Each shot was calculated to cause damage but not necessarily destroy the enemy vessel. The Krell returned fire, but their weapons weren't precise. They weren't calculated. They fired everything they had, all at once in massive volleys that lit up space like a storm. "That's not protocol," Kyle said, leaning forward in his seat. The first Council ship exploded, then another, then 3 more. "They're not following the rules," Rachel whispered. The battle continued for an hour. The Council fleet fought exactly as it had been trained. Ships maintained their formations. They calculated their shots. They assessed damage and adjusted their tactics according to the mathematical models. The Krell just kept firing. They didn't care about formations or calculations. When a Council ship damaged one of their vessels, they destroyed it completely in response. When Council ships tried to move to optimal positions, the Krell charged straight at them. Jake watched the casualty counter climb. 5%, 8%, 10%. "They should withdraw soon," Danny said. "Council protocol says they withdraw at 12% casualties." 12% came and went. The Council fleet was still fighting, but now their formations were breaking. Ships were out of position. The mathematical perfection was falling apart. At 14% casualties, Vexthar gave the order. All ships, strategic withdrawal, fall back to rally point 7. The Council fleet turned and began to retreat. It was an organized withdrawal, still following protocol. The Krell didn't stop. They pursued the retreating ships, firing constantly. More Council ships exploded. The organized retreat became a desperate flight. "They're not letting them go," Lisa said, her voice tight. "They're supposed to let them go. That's how it works." "That's how it works for the Council," Jake said quietly. The Krell never agreed to those rules. By the time the surviving Council ships escaped, casualties were at 28%. Over 50 ships destroyed. Thousands dead. Corinth Prime fell to the Krell within hours. The Council called an emergency session. Every member species was present, watching through their communication screens. The chamber that had been so calm and orderly 6 months ago was now filled with rapid conversations and worried movements. "This is unprecedented," Ambassador Threnkal said. "They ignored our withdrawal signal. They pursued fleeing ships. This violates every protocol of civilized warfare." "They are not civilized," High Counselor Vexthar said. The large Throlian looked different now, older somehow. "They are barbarians. But our models show that with adjustments, we can still defeat them. We need to assemble a larger force." "How much larger?" another counselor asked. "At least 600 ships. With that force, our models show a 92% chance of victory." "And how long will it take to assemble such a force?" 3 weeks, possibly 4. "In 4 weeks, how many more worlds will fall?" the counselor pressed. No one answered. Jake watched all of this from his office on the station above Delta Persei 4. His staff was with him, all of them silent. "They don't know how to fight," Kyle said finally. "Not really. They know how to play war like a game, but the Krell aren't playing a game." "Should we offer to help?" Danny asked. "With 12 ships against 400? Lisa shook her head. "What difference could we make?" Jake stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the planet below. 50,000 humans lived there now. Families, children. They had come all this way to build a new life among the stars. "We know how to fight," Jake said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "The Council doesn't understand," Jake continued. "They think war is about calculations and protocols. They surrender when the math says they should, but we know different, don't we? We know what real war looks like." "Sir, we can't take on the entire Krell fleet," Lisa said. "No, we can't," Jake agreed. "But we can show the Council something they've forgotten, something they evolved past. We can show them what it looks like when someone refuses to surrender." He turned to face his staff. "Contact Earth. Request immediate military reinforcements. Every ship they can spare, and start preparing our fleet for combat." "Admiral, the Council might not want our help," Rachel warned. "They'll take it," Jake said. "Because right now, we're the only ones who know how to fight an enemy that doesn't follow their rules." "What are we going to tell them?" Danny asked. Jake thought for a moment. "Tell them that humanity is going to war, and when we fight, we don't do it with mathematics and protocols. We do it the old way, the human way." Within hours, the message went out to Earth. Within days, ships began to arrive at Delta Persei 4. Not the handful Jake commanded now, but dozens, then hundreds. Humanity was mobilizing its military for the first time since joining the Galactic Council. Ambassador Threnkal contacted Jake directly. The Velcrum appeared on the screen, its large eyes wide with something that might have been concern. "Admiral Morrison, we are receiving reports of a massive human military buildup at Delta Persei 4. This is highly unusual. What is happening?" "We're preparing to help defend Council space," Jake said simply. "Your fleet is too small to make a significant difference. Our models show that even with human reinforcements, the probability of success only increases by 0.3%. "Your models don't account for human tactics," Jake replied. "What tactics? You have no experience with space warfare. Your species only achieved faster than light travel 2 years ago. Respectfully, Admiral, you cannot help us with this." Jake smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. Ambassador, humanity has been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've fought in every condition imaginable. We've won battles we should have lost and lost battles we... The world of Draken's Gate was burning. From space, Admiral Jake Morrison could see the fires covering the planet's surface. The Krell fleet surrounded the world, bombarding it while the remaining Council defense forces tried desperately to hold them back. Status report, Jake ordered from the bridge of his flagship, the Valiant. Council forces are down to 30 ships, Kyle Bennett reported from Tactical. They started with 80. Casualties are at 62% and climbing. They're calling for retreat, 62%. The number made Jake's jaw tighten. By Council standards, they should have withdrawn when casualties hit 12%. But they were still fighting because they had nowhere to go. The Krell had them trapped. How many Krell ships? 243. They have us outnumbered 4-1. Those are bad odds, Commander Lisa Hayes said from her station. We've faced worse, Jake replied. It wasn't entirely true, but his crew didn't need to hear that. How long until the rest of our fleet arrives? 6 hours, sir, 6 hours. The Council forces wouldn't last 6 more minutes at this rate. Then we go in now, Jake said. All ships, battle formation Delta. Prepare for immediate engagement. Sir, should we inform the Council fleet of our arrival? Danny Pierce asked. They'll figure it out when we start shooting, Jake said. Lisa, get down to the fighter bay. I want our wings in space the moment we enter weapons range. Lisa stood and headed for the door, but she paused. Jake, be careful. Always am, he lied. The human fleet consisted of 60 ships. They were smaller than most Council vessels, built for speed and maneuverability rather than heavy armor. Earth's engineers had designed them for combat, real combat, not the calculated exchanges the Council practiced. All ships reporting ready, Kyle announced. Then let's show these aliens how humans fight, Jake said. All ships full speed ahead. Target the Krell fleet. Fire at will. The Valiant and its sister ships accelerated toward the battle. On the Council communication channels, Jake could hear the confusion. Unknown ships approaching, a Council officer reported. They're moving at excessive speed. They're going to collide with the Krell formation. Those are human vessels, another voice said. What are they doing? They were about to find out. The human fleet hit the Krell like a hammer. Instead of maintaining the safe distances the Council preferred, human ships dove right into the enemy formation. The Krell, expecting another calculated engagement, weren't prepared for the chaos. Target the ship on our left, Jake ordered. Full weapons, all guns. The Valiant opened fire with everything it had. Energy weapons, missiles, railguns. The Krell ship's shields flared and failed. The ship exploded in a ball of fire. Next target right ahead. Ram speed. Sir? Kyle looked back in shock. You heard me. Ram speed. The Valiant accelerated directly at another Krell ship. At the last second, Jake ordered, full starboard thrust now. The ship twisted violently. Alarms blared as the Valiant's hull scraped along the Krell vessel, tearing through its armor. The human ship shuddered but held together. Damage report, Jake called out, gripping his chair as the ship stabilized. Hull breach on deck 7. Shields at 40%, but we're still in the fight, Kyle reported. Across the battle, other human ships were doing similar maneuvers. They didn't maintain formation. They didn't calculate optimal firing solutions. They attacked like wolves, fast and aggressive, each ship acting almost independently but somehow working together. In the fighter bay, Commander Lisa Hayes climbed into her cockpit. Around her, 40 other pilots were doing the same. These were human fighters, small and fast, designed to be flown by a single person. All wings, this is Hayes, she spoke into her comm. You know the drill. Get in close, hit them hard, and don't let up. If you get hit, keep flying until you can't anymore. We're here to win, not to survive. It was a harsh thing to say, but it was true. The pilots knew it. They had trained for this. Wing Alpha ready, a voice called. That was Lieutenant Amy Foster, one of the best pilots in the fleet. Wing Beta ready, another voice added. Captain Brandon Cole, veteran of a dozen training exercises. All wings launch, Lisa ordered. The fighters poured out of the Valiant and the other human ships. They swarmed into the battle like angry insects, dodging between the larger vessels. The Krell tried to target them, but the fighters were too small, too fast, moving in ways that seemed to defy physics. Amy Foster pulled her fighter into a turn that would have killed most alien pilots. The G-forces crushed her into her seat, but her flight suit compensated. Humans had built these ships to match human capabilities. and humans could withstand forces that would knock most species unconscious. "Target locked," Amy said, keeping her voice steady despite the pressure. She fired. Her missiles streaked across space and slammed into a Krell cruiser's engine. "That's one," she called out, moving to next target. On the council ships, the surviving officers watched in horror and confusion. Ambassador Thren Cal was on the bridge of the council flagship, having evacuated there when the station fell. "What are they doing?" Thren Cal asked. "They're violating every protocol. They're too close to each other. They're going to cause collateral damage." "They're winning," High Counselor Vexthar said quietly. The Throlian watched the tactical display with something like awe. "Look at their casualty rate. 20% and climbing, but they're not withdrawing. 20% should trigger automatic retreat," Thren Cal said. "Why aren't they following protocol?" "Because they don't follow protocol," Vexthar said. "Watch." A human destroyer, the Defiance, had lost its shields and taken heavy damage. Half its weapons were offline. According to every tactical calculation, the ship should withdraw for repairs. Instead, it accelerated toward a Krell battleship. "That ship is crippled," Thren Cal said. "What is it doing?" "I think," Vexthar said slowly, "it's going to ram." The Defiance plowed into the Krell battleship at full speed. The impact tore both ships apart. Escape pods ejected from the Defiance at the last second, scattering into space. "They sacrificed their ship," Thren Cal whispered. "They destroyed themselves to take out one enemy vessel." "That's insane. That's human," Vexthar corrected. Jake watched the Defiance's sacrifice from his command chair. He felt a moment of grief for the crew, but he pushed it aside. There would be time for mourning later. Right now they had a battle to win. All ships the Defiance bought us an opening. Push through the center of their formation. Split them in half. The human fleet surged forward. They were down to 54 ships now, casualties at 38%. By council standards, they should have retreated long ago. But humans didn't calculate acceptable losses the same way. Dr. Rachel Stone watched the battle from the medical bay aboard the Valiant. The wounded were starting to arrive. Burns, broken bones, radiation exposure. She worked quickly, her hands steady despite the ship shaking from weapons impacts. "Doctor, we're at 40% casualties," a nurse reported. "Then we have 60% still fighting," Rachel replied. "Keep working." A young ensign was brought in, his uniform burned, his face pale. "Are we winning?" he asked Rachel as she treated his wounds. "Yes," she told him, though she didn't know if it was true. "Yes, we are." Back in the fighter wings, Lisa Hayes was in the middle of the thickest fighting. Her fighter had taken hits, warnings flashing across her displays. She ignored them and locked onto another target. "Hayes to all wings," she called. "Reform on me. We're going to hit their command ship." "That's suicide," someone called back. "Probably," Lisa agreed. "Do it anyway." 20 fighters followed her. Half of them wouldn't make it back. Lisa knew that. They all knew that. But they went anyway. Because that's what humans did. When the mission required it, when people needed saving, humans went forward even when the math said to turn back. The Krell command ship was massive, 3 times the size of the Valiant. It bristled with weapons and armor. But it hadn't expected a direct assault from tiny fighters. Lisa's wing dove at the ship from above. They dodged defensive fire, twisting and turning through a storm of energy beams. Amy Foster's fighter exploded to Lisa's left. Brandon Cole's fighter took a hit that sent it spinning away. "Keep going," Lisa ordered. "Get those missiles in close." 3 fighters made it through. Lisa was one of them. They released their missiles point blank into the command ship's bridge section. The explosions ripped through the armor and into the ship's vital systems. The Krell command ship began to list to one side, power failing across its hull. "That's their leader," Kyle reported from the Valiant. "The Krell fleet is losing coordination." Jake saw the opening. "All ships, maximum aggression. Don't give them time to reorganize." The human fleet pressed the attack. They were down to 47 ships now, casualties over 50%. But the Krell, for the first time since they invaded Council space, were falling back. "They're retreating," Thren Cal said in disbelief. "The Krell are retreating." "Against an enemy with half the numbers," Vexthar added. "How?" The answer was flying across the battlefield in damaged ships and desperate maneuvers. It was in pilots who kept flying with failing systems and crews who kept fighting at casualty rates that should have broken them. It was in every human who looked at impossible odds and decided to fight anyway. The Krell fleet withdrew, leaving Draken's Gate behind. The Council forces. The video played again on every screen across Council space. It showed the battle at Draken's Gate from multiple angles. Alien analysts watched it over and over, trying to understand what they had witnessed. In a small office deep inside Council Station, Ambassador Threnkal sat with 3 military analysts. They were reviewing the human tactics frame by frame. "Here," one analyst said, pausing the video. "This human ship has lost shields and taken critical damage. Survival probability is only 18% if it continues fighting, yet it does not withdraw. And here," another analyst pointed, "this fighter pilot executes a turn that generates over 9 Gs of force. Most species would lose consciousness. The human continues fighting. Their casualty rate reached 56% before the Krell withdrew," the third analyst said. "Our protocols call for retreat at 12%. How do they function with such losses?" Threnkal had no answer, but someone did. On the Krell command ship far beyond Council borders, Warlord Kreshnak studied the same battle footage. His analysts were equally confused, but for different reasons. "They should have broken," his chief tactician said. "We destroyed 30% of their forces in the first hour. They should have panicked and scattered. Instead, they fought harder." "Play it again," Kreshnak ordered. "The part where their ship rams our battleship." They watched the Defiance's final moments. The damaged human ship accelerating towards certain destruction. The crew evacuating at the last possible second. The massive explosion that took both ships. "They sacrificed themselves," the tactician said, "deliberately. This makes no strategic sense." "It makes perfect sense," Kreshnak said quietly, "if your goal is to win at any cost. These humans are not like the Council species. They are warriors. So are we," the tactician pointed out. "No," Kreshnak corrected. "We are conquerors. There is a difference. Warriors fight for something. We fight because it is our nature. These humans, they fight like their lives depend on every battle, like surrender is worse than death. What do? Kreshnak watched the footage of human fighters swarming through his fleet, dodging fire that should have destroyed them, pressing attacks that should have been suicidal. "We learn," he said, "and we prepare, because this war just became much more difficult." Back on Council Station, an emergency session had been called. Representatives from all 12 species gathered to discuss the human problem. Because that's what it was becoming, a problem. "They saved Draken's Gate," one counselor argued. "Without human intervention, the world would have fallen." "At what cost?" another countered. "They lost over half their fleet. That level of sacrifice is unsustainable." "Yet they continue to send more ships," a third counselor added. "Earth has mobilized its entire military. Over 200 vessels are now in Council space, with more arriving daily." High Counselor Vexthar raised his hand for silence. "The question before us is simple. What are humans? Are they the saviors we need against the Krell, or are they a danger to everything the Council represents?" "They are barbarians," a counselor said. "They fight without honor, without protocol. They sacrifice their own people as if lives have no value." "That's not fair," another voice spoke up. It was Counselor Mira Vess, a young representative from a species that resembled tall, graceful birds. "I have studied the human broadcasts. They mourn their dead deeply. Every loss affects them. But they continue fighting because they believe the alternative is worse. Belief does not change mathematics," Threnkal said. "Admiral Morrison claims human tactics are superior, but the numbers show they take catastrophic casualties." "Yet they win," Vexthar said quietly. "Against odds that would cause any Council fleet to surrender, they win." The debate continued for hours. Finally, it was decided to conduct a full study of human warfare. They needed to understand these strange aliens who had joined their ranks. Dr. Rachel Stone received the request while she was treating wounded soldiers in the medical bay. The Council wanted a scientific analysis of human combat capabilities. They wanted to know why humans could function at casualty rates that would break any other species. Rachel assembled a team. She pulled in biologists, psychologists, and historians. They began their research, and what they found shocked the Council representatives who received the reports. Humans evolved on what they call a deathworld. Rachel explained during a presentation to the Council. Earth has more large predators than most inhabited worlds. It has extreme weather, natural disasters, diseases. Human evolution was shaped by constant threats. She displayed images of Earth's animals. Lions, bears, sharks, crocodiles. Humans are not the strongest species on their planet. They're not the fastest or the most heavily armed. But they are persistence predators. They evolved to chase prey for hours or days until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They never give up. This is biological? Threncal asked. Yes. Humans have a stress response system that releases chemicals called adrenaline and endorphins. Under pressure, they become faster, stronger, and less sensitive to pain. What would cause panic in most species causes focus in humans. They are literally built to function in combat. She changed the display to show human history, but it's not just biology. Human culture has been shaped by warfare for over 10,000 years. While most council species developed beyond physical conflict thousands of years ago, humans continued to fight. They developed philosophies, strategies, and traditions around combat. Rachel showed footage from the Human Military Academy on Earth. Instructor Chris Palmer was teaching a class on military history. Never surrender when you can still fight. Palmer was saying to his students, mission first, people always, but the mission doesn't stop. You fight until you win or until you physically cannot continue. That is the human way. This is what they teach their young. Miraves asked, her voice shocked. This is what they teach their warriors, Rachel corrected. And on Earth, many young people choose to become warriors. It's considered honorable, heroic even. She displayed human literature, movies, and songs. Human culture glorifies sacrifice in battle. They tell stories of last stands, of impossible victories, of heroes who died defending others. These stories shape how humans think about warfare. This is deeply concerning, Threncal said. A species that glorifies death in battle is dangerous to themselves and others. They don't glorify death, Rachel argued. They glorify the choice to fight for something worth dying for. There's a difference. Is there? Threncal challenged. Rachel thought carefully before answering. Yes, humans don't want to die. They fear death like anyone. But they fear failure more. They fear abandoning their duties. They fear letting others down. So when faced with the choice between retreat and sacrifice, many humans choose sacrifice. The council members were silent, processing this information. Rachel continued. There's more. Humans form what they call bonds with their fellow soldiers. They don't just fight for abstract concepts. They fight for the person next to them. This creates a psychological effect where humans will endure enormous hardship to avoid abandoning their comrades. Pack bonding, Vexthar said. Like predator species. Exactly. And this bonding intensifies under stress. The more danger a human group faces, the tighter their bonds become. It's another survival mechanism from their evolution. On Earth, the military academies were training more officers for the growing fleet. Instructor Chris Palmer stood before a class of young council officers who had volunteered to learn human tactics. War is not mathematics, Palmer told them. It's not clean or logical. It's chaos. And in chaos, you need three things to survive. First, adaptability. Plans fail. Equipment breaks. Allies fall. You adapt or you die. A Velcrim officer raised his hand. But our models account for variables. We calculate multiple scenarios. Your models can't account for everything, Palmer said. Let me tell you about a human battle from our history. It was called Thermopylae. 300 human soldiers held a narrow pass against an army of thousands. The math said they should surrender immediately. They fought for 3 days. They all died, but they gave their allies time to prepare defenses. Because of their sacrifice, their side eventually won the war. They all died, the Velcrim repeated. How is that victory? Because they achieved their mission, Palmer explained. Victory isn't always about survival. Sometimes it's about doing your duty even when you know the cost. The class was quiet. Some looked disturbed. Others looked thoughtful. Second thing you need, Palmer continued, aggression. Not mindless violence, but controlled aggression. The will to close with the enemy and destroy them. Council tactics are defensive by nature. You fight to minimize losses. We fight to win. That's reckless, another officer said. Maybe, Palmer agreed. But when you're facing an enemy like the Krell who won't play by your rules, being defensive gets you killed. Being aggressive gives you a chance. And the third thing? Someone asked. The refusal to quit, Palmer said. No matter how bad it gets. No matter what the odds are. You keep fighting until you win or you can't fight anymore. That's not mathematics or biology. That's choice. Every human in combat makes that choice every day. Back on Council Station, the debate continued. Young officers like Lieutenant Velcris a Throlian who had watched the battle at Draken's. The Krell fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 600 ships, the largest force they had ever assembled. Their dark hulls blocked out the stars as they began their approach to humanity's homeworld. Warlord Kreshnak stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the blue and green planet grow larger on the display. Humanity's birthworld, he said, where these warriors come from. Today we erase them from the galaxy. Sensors detect human fleet ahead, his tactician reported. Numbers are less than our intelligence suggested. They have only 200 ships. 200 against 600, Kreshnak said. They cannot win. Should we offer them terms of surrender? No. We have learned that humans do not surrender. We will give them what they want. A battle to the death. In orbit around Earth, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant, now the flagship of humanity's defense fleet. Every human warship had returned to Earth. Every pilot, every soldier, every crew member. 200 ships to defend 8 billion people. They outgun us 3-1. Kyle reported from Tactical. Maybe worse. Doesn't matter, Jake said. This is Earth. We're not calculating acceptable losses today. We're not following any protocols. Today we fight the way humans have always fought when their backs are against the wall. We fight until we win or there's nothing left. Commander Lisa Hayes was in the fighter bay, preparing her squadron for launch. Around her, hundreds of pilots were doing the same. The bay was crowded, tense, but also strangely calm. These men and women knew what they were facing. They knew the odds. They came anyway. Listen up, Lisa said over the squadron channel. I'm not going to lie to you. Most of us aren't coming back from this. The math is against us. But we're not fighting for math today. We're fighting for our families down there. For our friends. For every person on Earth who's looking up at the sky and trusting us to protect them. We won't let them down, Lieutenant Amy Foster said. Her fighter had been repaired after Draken's Gate, but it still showed scars from that battle. No, we won't, Lisa agreed, because that's not what humans do. In the civilian sectors of the orbital defense station Haven, Dr. Rachel Stone prepared her medical teams. They had turned every available space into treatment areas. It still wouldn't be enough. She knew that. But they would save everyone they could. Doctor, are we really going to win this? A young nurse asked. Rachel looked at her. The nurse couldn't have been more than 20 years old. I don't know, Rachel said honestly. But I know we're going to fight like hell. And sometimes that's enough. Down on Earth's surface, billions of people watch the sky. In cities and towns, in homes and public spaces, everyone knew what was happening. The news had spread quickly. The Krell were coming. Humanity's fleet would try to stop them. In New York, a mother held her children close and pointed to the stars. See those lights moving up there? Those are our people. They're protecting us. In Tokyo, an old man who had served in Earth's military decades ago stood on his balcony and saluted the sky. In Lagos, a young girl asked her father, "Are we going to be okay?" He looked at the defensive fleet moving into position and said, "Yes, because humans don't give up. Ever." The Krell fleet approached. They maintained their tight formation, weapons charging. This would be a straightforward assault. Overwhelming force against inadequate defenses. All ships, Jake ordered. Stand by. The human fleet waited. 200 ships arranged in a sphere around Earth. Behind them, the planet they were sworn to protect. Ahead of them, an enemy that wanted to destroy everything they loved. Sir, they're in weapons range, Kyle reported. Hold, Jake ordered. They're charging weapons. Hold. The tension on the bridge was enormous. Every second felt like an hour. They're firing. Now, Jake said calmly. All ships, evasive pattern Omega. Fighter wings launch. The human fleet exploded into motion. Ships scattered in every direction, moving faster and more erratically than the Krell had anticipated. The first Krell volley hit mostly empty space. Thousands of fighters poured from the capital ships. They swarmed toward the Krell fleet like angry hornets, too small and numerous to track effectively. Lisa's fighter was in the lead. All wings target their command ships. Take out their coordination. The Krell tried to adjust. Their ships turned to track the human vessels, but humans didn't move in predictable patterns. They dodged and weaved, using their smaller size and better maneuverability to avoid fire. This is the Relentless, a voice called over the comm. We're making our run. The destroyer Relentless, shields already failing, accelerated straight toward a Krell battleship. Point defense fire raked its hull, but it didn't stop. At the last second, the crew evacuated in escape pods. The Relentless slammed into the Krell ship at full velocity. Both vessels disappeared in a massive explosion. "That's for Draken's Gate," someone whispered on the channel. The battle became a maelstrom. Human ships fought with a ferocity that shocked even the Krell, who had thought themselves the most brutal warriors in the galaxy. When weapons failed, ships rammed. When shields fell, crews kept fighting. When ships were disabled, their crews evacuated to be picked up by other vessels, then got back in fighters and returned to the battle. Jake watched his casualty counter climb. 20%. 30%. 40%, sir. We're losing ships fast, Kyle said, his voice strained. "Keep fighting," Jake ordered. "Redirect all reserve power to weapons. 50% casualties. Half the fleet destroyed or disabled. By Council standards, by any reasonable military doctrine, they should withdraw. Evacuate Earth and concede the planet." Jake looked at the planet on his display. He thought about his sister down there, his nephews, his friends, billions of people who had no way to defend themselves. "All ships," he said into the comm. "I know you're tired. I know we've taken heavy losses. But this is Earth, this is home. We don't retreat. We don't surrender. We fight until we win or we die trying. That's what humans do. That's who we are." On the surface, people heard the broadcast. They watched the lights in the sky as ships exploded and fighters darted through the chaos. They watched their defenders die, and they hoped. In the Krell command ship, Warlord Kreshnak was beginning to feel something he had never experienced in all his conquests. Doubt. "Casualties?" he demanded. 30% and climbing, his tactician reported. "But the humans have lost over 60% of their fleet. Then why aren't they broken?" Kreshnak roared. "Why do they keep fighting?" No one had an answer. Another Krell ship exploded as a human frigate, already dead in space, used its last power to detonate its reactor next to the enemy vessel. The crew had no chance to escape. They had chosen to die to take an enemy with them. "These humans are insane," the tactician said. "No," Kreshnak said slowly. "They're not insane. They're protecting their home. We've never faced an enemy fighting on their own soil before. Everything we've conquered, we attacked far from their homeworlds. But here now we're seeing what happens when you threaten everything a species holds dear. Should we withdraw?" "No," Kreshnak said. "We're committed now. We have to win or—" The display lit up with new contacts. Dozens of them. "No, hundreds. What is that?" Kreshnak demanded. On the Valiant, Jake saw the same readings and felt something he hadn't felt in hours. Hope. "Sir, it's the Council fleet," Kyle reported, his voice rising with excitement. "They're here. All of them." High Counselor Vexthar led a combined force of 800 ships. Every Council species had contributed. Felkrim, Throlian, and dozens of others. But they weren't fighting the way they used to. "All Council forces," Vexthar broadcast. "Today we stand with humanity. Today we fight not with calculations and protocols, but with purpose. We have watched humans defend their world with courage that shames our careful strategies. It is time we remembered what it means to fight for something worth defending." Lieutenant Vel Chris, now commanding his own ship, felt his heart's pound with something that might have been human-like adrenaline. "For Earth," he called out, surprising himself. His crew echoed the cry. The Council fleet hit the Krell from behind, but they didn't follow the old protocols. They had learned from humanity. They fought aggressively, accepting risks they would never have taken before. The tide turned. The Krell, facing over 1,000 ships fighting with human-inspired determination, began to fall back. Their casualties climbed past 40%. Then 50. Warlord Kreshnak knew his force was defeated. But he had learned something from studying humans. Sometimes honor demanded you finish what you started regardless of the cost. "All ships," he ordered. "Final assault. Target the planet directly. If we cannot win, we will at least make them bleed." The remaining Krell ships, over 200 of them, began a desperate charge toward Earth. They would break through or die trying. "They're going for Earth," Kyle shouted. Jake didn't hesitate. "All ships intercept course. Put everything between them and the planet." What was left of the human fleet, barely 70 ships still combat capable, moved to block the Krell charge. They were joined by Council vessels. The two fleets collided in the space between the Krell and Earth. Lisa's fighter wing, reduced to just 5 pilots, including herself and Amy Foster, made a final attack run on the Krell command ship. They had no missiles left, no heavy weapons, just their guns and their determination.